Hey everyone, what's up? It's Babylonius from WalkingTheWind.com here with another video guide for you. This time we're going to be covering the talents, what they do, and which ones you should choose in each situation. So for anyone who doesn't know, talents are what you get in World of Warcraft. They provide extra bonuses, extra abilities, and stuff for different situations. So the monk talents, as you can see, I'm using the Wowhead's talent calculator. It's kind of the easiest way to show and include a tooltip that everyone can see. So we'll start with the top at the talents that you get at level 15. From the right you have Chi Burst, which is a 30-second cooldown. It is a casted ability that shoots a burst of Chi energy in front of you, and it heals all allies it hits and damages all enemies it hits in a straight line. So it's costs no chi, it's got a 40-yard range, and it just shoots off in the distance. Next we have Eye of the Tiger. Eye of the Tiger puts a dot on the target that you're hitting. It only puts on a maximum of one target. So if you hit another target with your Tiger Palm, which is what applies it, the Eye of the Tiger from the previous target will disappear and go on this current target. And what that does is it deals ticking nature damage to the enemy as well as heals you as well. So next we have Chi Wave. Chi Wave is a ball of Chi that you bounce back and forth between an enemy and an ally. If you cast it on an enemy, it will hit an enemy 4 times maximum, and if you cast it on an ally, it'll hit an ally maximum of 4 times. So for example, as I said, it will bounce back and forth a maximum of 7 times. Hitting a enemy will deal damage, hitting an ally will heal them. If you cast it on an enemy, it will go enemy, ally, enemy, ally, enemy, ally, enemy, and vice versa if you cast it on yourself or any other ally. You cannot control it once you've cast it. It will hit your target, and then after that it will bounce back and forth, so it may not always hit you, it may not always hit the same enemy or the same ally, so after that you cannot control it. Typically, Chi Burst does the most damage for AoE situations. Chi Wave does the most damage for single target situations, and Eye of the Tiger is if you're just looking to be lazy. The benefit of Chi Burst is that you can do a reasonable chunk of damage in AoE, and they don't have to necessarily be in range, as well as it heals a reasonable amount for all allies that you hit. Chi Wave is typically the one that people choose, even in AoE situations. The fact that Chi Wave has a 15-second cooldown and no cast time is what makes Chi Wave, in general, the most attractive talent of this row. Chi Burst does more damage, but because of the shorter cooldown, Chi Burst does more damage, but Chi Wave is typically more attractive because it weaves into our mastery and our hit combo bonus much easier. It's a free cast, just free damage. You want to use it typically as close to uncooldown, but it's pretty far down the priority list, and if you're looking for the priority list, you can find that on WalkingTheWind.com as well. So next in the level 30 talents, we have Chi Torpedo, Tiger's Lust, and Celerity. So Chi Torpedo is different from the Chi Torpedo of old. It is more similar to what was called Momentum previously. And Chi Torpedo, it looks like a Chi Torpedo. It has a 20-second recharge. You kind of spin like a corkscrew instead of a roll. It has 2 charges, and you will travel a longer distance in your torpedo than you will as a roll. And then after you cast it, you get a 10-second buff that increases your movement speed by 30%. And that buff can stack up to 2 times. So if you roll, or I should say torpedo twice, you will move 60% faster for 10 seconds. And you can stack it. You can run for 9 seconds at 30%, roll again, and have it go up to 60 seconds. And Chi Torpedo provides a lot, if not the most, overall movement distance and speed. You can if you need to get if you're running back, from a wipe, Chi Torpedo will be the fastest way. It's useful for having to move a lot in a fight, depending on the mechanics. If you have to use sustained movement, then it's very useful. Tiger's Lust is typically what most people choose for most situations. Tiger's Lust provides a friendly target, so it can be yourself, can be an ally, with a 70% movement speed buff for 6 seconds and removes all roots and snares. And this can be useful in PvP, it can be useful in PvE as well, to break people out. There are certain mechanics that it will apply to, like on the Cenarius fight in Emerald Nightmare, someone was rooted in the brambles, you could cast Tiger's Lust on them and they would become unrooted. This is typically the most chosen talent because it's flexible. It does not subtract from your rolls, so you have your 2 rolls as well as Tiger's Lust, and it can be cast on another target like a friendly or a tank or something like that to help them get from point A to point B just that little bit faster. So lastly, we have Celerity. Celerity reduces the cooldown of roll by 5 seconds as well as increasing the maximum number of charges by 1. Celerity is very useful if you have to move short distances, such as to get out of mechanics, more frequently. It will provide you with more burst movement, but not as much of sustained movement as Chi Torpedo, or controlled movement as Tiger's Lust, because obviously you can direct where you're going as you run. So Celerity has quite a lot of uses in fights, and a lot of people prefer Celerity, but the general recommendation is to take Tiger's Lust for most situations, although the other 2 choices are equally beneficial in their own right. So next we have the 45 level talents, Energizing Elixir, Ascension, and Power Strikes, and I will start with Energizing Elixir. Energizing Elixir is an on-use talent. It's a 1-minute cooldown, and what it does is it fills up your energy and your chi. So if you had 0 energy and 0 chi, then boom, you have 100% of your energy and 5 chi. This provides the most resources for your buck. At a minimum, it provides 4 or 5 chi if you do it with 0 chi, and then any additional energy you get back as well as just bonus resources. So Energizing Elixir is typically the most chosen and the best one of this tier, but I'll cover the other ones as well. Ascension increases your maximum number of chi by 1 and your energy regen by 10%, and that seems like it would be a lot more useful than it actually is in practice. For some reason in the PTR, or in beta even, in alpha, it was nerfed from 15% energy regen to 10%. It's not a flat 10%, it is an additional 10% on what you already have. So if you have 13 energy per second, it will add 1.3 energy per second to your total. It will not just provide like a 10% haste. It does not work the same way as haste. It does not increase cooldowns or cast times like haste does. So Ascension is typically the weakest. If you really want to be lazy, you like the extra chi to play with, you can choose Ascension, but it just provides nowhere near the amount of resources that the other 2 provide. Next is Power Strikes. Power Strikes is a passive, and every 15 seconds your Tiger Palm will generate 1 additional chi, so instead of 2 it'll generate 3. Power Strikes works on a rolling time frame where if you don't generate that extra chi, say you're at maximum chi or 1 off, or 2 off, so that your Tiger Palm just keeps only providing 2, it will save it up. It's not going to disappear. The 15 seconds kind of cycles around, so you can have 1 Tiger Strike or 1 Power Strike generate an extra chi, and then 2 or 3 seconds later you Tiger Palm again and get another chi as well, because maybe you saved up the previous charge. So it works not quite like charges, but it's not like you have to use it every 15 seconds or it disappears. Power Strikes generates a maximum of 4 chi per minute on average, which is slightly less than Energizing Elixir. It's easy to get 4 chi every minute out of Energizing Elixir, but Energizing Elixir can provide up to 9 chi if you get 100 energy back plus 5 chi worth. So the sheer amount of resources that you can gain from Energizing Elixir makes it the best choice. Power Strikes is a close-ish second in single target, but when it comes to AoE, Energizing Elixir is just the best. So most situations you're going to be choosing Energizing Elixir. The 60 tier, we have Ring of Peace, Black Ox Statue, and Leg Sweep. Ring of Peace was changed recently. How recently, depending on your when you're watching this video, but now you can place it down on a target location, and anything in that enters that ring will get popped out. So the ring is down for 8 seconds. It's useful for knockbacks and stuff like that, but it's not a very useful rating talent. It doesn't pop up very often, but I'm sure PvP, maybe even some dungeons, or if you just need to keep the bad guys away from a point, for a little bit, it's a useful talent. So it's not a lot of times it's useful in raiding, but it does have its uses, I'm sure, somewhere. So next, we have what we call Dave. He's called Dave. Don't worry about it. He's asked for you to respect his life choices. So Dave is a Black Ox statue. It is a new addition to the Windwalker toolkit as of 7.15. You put Dave down, and he stays there for 15 minutes. He pulses threat to all enemies within 30 yards. They will attack him if he has enough threat. He does not pulse a lot of threat, so if you attack them, you will probably pull them off of him pretty easily. You can cast Provoke, which is our taunt, on Dave, and it will taunt all of the targets to you, which is terrifying as a DPS, so it is not recommended that you do that too often. Not really understanding why it doesn't taunt them all to Dave, but who knows. They just kind of made it work the same way as Brewmaster. So there, I'm sure at some point there's a good time to do it, to group up ads, maybe if you don't have a grip available to you through a DH or a DK. But Dave, the Black Ox, is useful, just not very frequently. So Leg Sweep is finally the last in this tier, and it's the one that most people are going to stick with. It's a 45-second cooldown. You sweep the leg, a la the Karate Kid, and knocks down all enemies within 5 yards and stuns them for 5 seconds. It interrupts casts, stuns them for 5 seconds. It's a good, strong stun, and it's kind of what what Windwalker monks are frequently kind of asked to do in terms of stun rotations and stuff like that. So next we get into the 75 tier, and this is your survival tier. We have Healing Elixirs, Diffuse Magic, and Dampen Harm. Healing Elixirs provides a heal that you can click. There's a 30-second recharge and 2 charges. You can use it to heal you for 15%, or it will automatically trigger if you drop below 35%, provided you're not dead. It will not prevent you from dying. It is not like Argent Defender, if Argent Defender's even like that still. But I played a Pally 5 or 6 years ago, so that's what Argent Defender used to be. So if a charge is available, it will use the charge automatically if you drop below 35%. There have been reports that this does not work every time, so do not necessarily rely on it. It's typically better to use it proactively. So then we get to Diffuse Magic. Diffuse Magic is your magic reduction cooldown. It's got a 1.5-minute cooldown, and it reduces the damage that you take from magic abilities by 60% for 6 seconds, and transfers all currently harmful magic effects on you back to their original caster if possible. It's not frequently possible in a raid, but it is useful for a magic dispel. If you need that in a fight, saves your healers from having to dispel you if you can do so. So Diffuse Magic is very strong in fights where there's magic damage in big chunks to help you survive. It used to be stronger. Some would say it used to be too strong, and hence why it was nerfed. So it was nerfed to 60%, still a respectable cooldown. Next we get Dampen Harm. Dampen Harm was recently changed, so now it has a 2-minute cooldown, and it reduces all the damage you take by somewhere between 20% to 50% for 10 seconds, with larger hits being reduced by more. I don't know of anyone who has tested, how much hits you need to take in order to change the damage reduction, but a maximum of 50% damage for all damage, physical or magical, is a pretty decent cooldown. It's useful in some fights where the damage is physical and comes in big chunks. So Dampen Harm will be useful in physical fights. That comes in big chunks. Diffuse Magic will be if magic damage comes in big chunks, and Healing Elixirs will be useful if you just need that extra little heal. It's kind of the all-purpose safety heal, so I'm not going to pick one. These are really primarily situational of these, so understand what each of them do and when you can use them. So the 90 tier, we have Rushing Jadewind, Invoke Zuen, the White Tiger, and hit combo. So we'll start with Rushing Jadewind. Rushing Jadewind is a 6-second cooldown. It costs 1 chi, and different from how it used to work, now it costs a chi instead of provides a chi. And what it does is it surrounds you in a chi tornado that deals damage over 6 seconds to any enemies within 8 yards. Now in 7.1.5 they have added that it will apply Mark of the Crane on up to 4 nearby targets. It only seems to apply them on the first tick of damage. So if you hit a target after that first tick goes out, they will not be marked, which is important to you. So you don't want to cast it ahead of time and then run in. You want to wait till you're in and then cast it in order to get the marks. This is useful in situations where you want to get a lot of marks very quickly, especially if you're using Serenity. It's useful to get marks very quickly. If you have Storm, Earth, and Fire, then you figure you can get 12 stacks in one cooldown, which is quite a bit. If you're using it, it is a reasonable damage increase, just not as strong as the other options. So next we have Invoke Zuin, and I cannot remember the name that he has been given. I think it's Kenny. Maybe Kevin. I think it's Kenny. But basically you summon Zuin the White Tiger. He comes, roars next to you, and he attacks your targets for 45 seconds. He stays up for a while. He attacks your primary target. If you switch targets, he will switch targets. And he also strikes 3 enemies within 10 yards every second with Tiger Lightning. He is useful. He has the 3-minute cooldown, so he has kind of a burst damage talent. He's useful if there are 3 targets, especially depending on the fight time. But if there are 3 targets, he does a pretty reasonable amount of damage to them. So lastly we have Hit Combo, and Hit Combo works similarly to our Mastery. So basically any time that you trigger your Mastery, which is called Combo Strikes, it grants you 2% increased damage, stacking up to 8 times. If you mess up your Mastery, you will drop Hit Combo and you will start down at 0. So Hit Combo is really typically the best talent you're going to take for all situations. It provides the most damage. Zuin can win sometimes at 3 targets and under, depending on the fight length, but in general, Hit Combo is what you're going to be rolling with. It's pretty much a flat, if you're playing it correctly, it's a flat 16% damage increase. It's not always easy. Not everyone, no one keeps it up 100% of the time, but there are weak auras to help you, and you can find those on weak auras online. But Hit Combo is going to be what you're taking in pretty much all situations, so I will select that one. So next we have the level 100 tier, and these are our last ones. These are our Chi Orbit, our Whirling Dragon Punch, and our Serenity. So Chi Orbit, as it says, every 5 seconds an orb of Chi forms around you and just kind of rotates around you. It's a very pretty light show, and when it hits a target, it explodes for damage to nearby enemies. You can have a maximum of 4 orbs. It's my favorite talent for just lounging around in town, because I like watching them spin around. It's also relatively useful for leveling, because you kind of get up to 4 stacks or 4 orbs and they all explode at once for a pretty reasonable chunk of damage. Overall, it is the weakest talent in this tier. It can actually be relatively strong at very, 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 very high targets sustained. When you would drop Whirling Dragon Punch in favor of Spinning Crane Kick, then obviously if you're not using Whirling Dragon Punch, Spinning Crane, then it's not useful. But that situation will pretty much never happen, or I shouldn't say never, but it will very rarely happen. So Chi Orbit for the most part can be ignored. Whirling Dragon Punch is next. It is a 24-second cooldown instant cast that has no cost. Basically, it pops you upward like a jump. You cannot control where you go. You just get popped straight upward. And you do 3 hits for 415% of your attack power damage to all enemies around you. And in order to use it, Fists of Fury and Rising Sun Kick have to be on cooldown. So it's an interesting mechanic for how you get to use Whirling Dragon Punch. You have to kind of plan out what order you're going to do things in. With the 2-piece from Nighthold, it becomes a little bit more difficult to find that spot. But in general, Whirling Dragon Punch is going to be what we're taking for pretty much all situations now that Serenity was nerfed. So Serenity was changed. As of now, it increases the damage you deal by 40% or 45% if you have the Spiritual Focus trait. All Chi consumers are free and have a 50% reduced cooldown. What it will do is it will reduce the cooldown in half of any abilities that are already on cooldown. So if your Fist of Fury has 10 seconds and you hit Serenity, it will have 5 seconds left. However, The cooldown reduction works similar to haste effects, whereas once the buff is over, your cooldowns return to the previous maximum. So if you cast Chi Orbit, if you cast Fist of Fury during Serenity, and you lose 4 seconds off, the cooldown is cut in half. So say from 24 to 12, then you lose 4 seconds while it's in Serenity. When you hit right before Serenity ends, you'll have an 8-second cooldown, and then when Serenity does end, it'll go up to a 20-second cooldown because it's 4 seconds off of the maximum cooldown. So the change really sucks in general, and obviously if you're listening to this later, maybe it's been changed back or something, but Serenity does replace Storm, Earth, and Fire. It can still be very useful in burst AoE situations where you just have to burn down a high number of targets because you can use it with Rushing Jadewind with half the cooldown and tag quite a bit of targets, and then unleash a pretty hefty amount of AoE damage through spamming Spinning Crane Kick, alternating with Rising Sun Kick and Blackout Kick to keep up your hit combo and your mastery. So Serenity still has its uses in some situations, but in general, you're going to want to pick Whirling Dragon Punch because of the Storm, Earth, and Fire bug fixes and the fact that Serenity was nerfed. So in general, this is going to be your talents for most situations. Like I said, Chi Burst can be used if you're finding you're not moving very often or you don't need to fill in the gaps in your rotation. Chi Orbit can be used for long sustained movement. Celerity would be for short bursts, whereas Tiger Lust is for just an additional movement. Energizing Elixir provides the most resources. Leg Sweep is going to be your most useful. The other two are not going to be that useful in general, but they will, I'm sure, have their time when you'll say, oh, this would be a great time for them. Healing Elixir heals you. Diffuse Magic is for magic damage, and Dampen Harm is for physical damage, so they all have their uses, hence why none is picked. Rushing Jadewind works well with Serenity to get a large number of stacks quickly for burst AoE, but not much more out of that. Invoke Zoo and the White Tiger is useful for burst on 1 to 3 targets depending on the fight time, but in general for 95% of the time you're going to be choosing hit combo. Chi Orbit is nice if you like the lights, useful in leveling or out in world quests if you want to be lazy like I often do. Whirling Dragon Punch is going to be your go-to talent, and Serenity for the most part can be ignored except for burst AoE when combined with Rushing Jadewind. So thank you for listening and watching. Hopefully this answers more questions than it creates. If you want to find out more information, you can go to my website, walkingthewind.com. It is a entirely Windwalker focused website with guides and stuff like that. Articles, updates on Sims. I spend quite a large amount of time doing so. So please check that out. And if you like the content that I provide between this video, the podcasts on the website, the articles on the website and stuff, then please support myself and Walking the Wind, and I'll put a link to support us in the description below. So thank you for watching, and take care.